Okay, we are moving on to Module 4, Switch Activation. We've already covered using natural movements to teach cause and effect, so let's take a look at teaching cause and effect through switch activation. We're going to get started by choosing a switch site and a movement to activate the switch. You just need to remember it does take a team. You're not on your own. You're going to start with observation and figure it out through trial and error. Let's see who might even use a switch to access their education. Well, definitely those students with physical challenges. They're unable to use direct select, meaning they're unable to use their fingers to access buttons. And they may be unable to use eye gaze to access their buttons. Or they have really unreliable motor control, making it such an effort to tap on a button. It may be fatiguing or just taking a really long time. The student is concentrating on muscle movement rather than the message he's trying to communicate. Then there are students with multiple challenges. Our students with visual impairments may need some tactile input. They may need to have a switch that has some sensory feel to it, or they may need auditory feedback, the use of sound to indicate that a switch has been successfully activated, especially when you get into using more than one switch to more easily access a more robust vocabulary. Then our students with complex communication needs may need additional time to process what they're doing. They may need additional time to learn cause and effect. So let's just think about this. It's a journey. We are talking about changing mindsets going into this. It's not a means to an end. Many of these complex students will be lifelong AT users. What we learn along the way shapes where we end up. So this is not a quick answer by any means. When introduced to these new skills and activities, the student will likely start learning more about themselves and their own capabilities as well. And these new discoveries might open doors to new possibilities for them. So where does this road actually lead us? Where are we going with switch activation? Well, number one, you can see a variety of switches, each one activated in a different manner. Some have different textures to meet the needs of our more sensory students. A communication partner can provide the strategy, partner-assisted scanning, for students unable to use direct select, such as pointing with their finger or eye pointing. Here you can see a comprehensive communication book, probably a POD book. A POD book is pragmatically organized, dynamic display communication book with its own set of directions. You can attend a training outside of the district and purchase their software to make a book, or you can create your own similar grid book in LessonFix. You can find more information on the flyer available for download in this course. A small grid book and partner-assisted scanning is a great way to eventually begin teaching the concept of scanning. Students receiving services in the home can learn to control their environment using a voice output communication device and Alexa or Google. You can view this video in Nearpod demonstrating a student using her head to activate a switch to navigate through her high-tech communication device vocabulary. You can also teach students to write using an alternate pencil and partner-assisted scanning. You can view the alternate pencil video and the partner-assisted scanning video in the Nearpod, and then download the document about partner-assisted scanning tips for writing with alternate pencils. Many of our complex learners have physical challenges when holding a book and turning a page. They may also have difficulty reading text. Your team can enroll the student in Learning Ally to listen to audiobooks. Don't forget about district book collections in Clever that also provide the text-to-speech accommodation. These are not only educational, but can be used for individual reading or leisure time activity. And then we have a video demonstrating an advanced AAC switch scanning user. You will have an opportunity to view these videos in Nearpod. All right, back to switch sites and movements. When choosing a switch site and movement, you can use this student response inventory. Get your team together and observe your student. What reflexive movements does your student demonstrate? What voluntary controlled movements do they demonstrate? What do they like to do? What do they not like to do? This will help you really get to know your student and to choose switches from there. You can download this document as well as the guide for completing it. So who can help you determine switch access and build switch skills? Well, you have your teacher, whether ESC, ESE, or Gen Ed. OT is very important for switch placement and possible student movements. Sometimes the student can voice an opinion. Your vision teacher and PT can definitely assist with positioning and seating. And you might need your DHH teacher. Definitely you, the SLP. Parents and guardians will know about their student, and in addition, really anyone working with the student, especially the MBA or para. So when might you introduce switch activation? So for our purposes of communication, you can start switch activation once the student has learned cause and effect through natural movements, and your student is ready to learn to express more messages. The student can use a switch to access increased vocabulary. Or if your student has limited motor movement, you can teach cause and effect via switch activation. All right, let's take a look at a few different kinds of switches, just to give you an idea of what is out there. We have a grip and puff, where you can either squeeze the tube, or you can blow air into the tube, or sip air out of the tube. It's a pneumatic switch using compressed air instead of electricity. A wobble switch can be hit from any direction, making it useful for students without precise movements. The tilt switch has a sensor that detects changes in its orientation or tilt. A little finger switch is useful for students with limited movements. Tiny little compact switches that can be mounted and again are useful for students with limited movements. There is a head device, a head switch easily activated by a light touch. Little microlight switches require the tiniest pressure to activate. And we have proximity switches, where you don't have to actually touch the switch. You just have to get near it. This one is a candy corn switch from AbleNet. It is designed for individuals with limited fine motor skills, low vision, or other challenges that make traditional switches difficult to use. You can look at the switches that are in the State Lending Library's website, at-udl.net. If you find one you'd like to try with your student, you can let your AT specialist know. They can order it for you to trial with a student. So remember, it is a journey. There is no perfect switch. There's no perfect switch site that you need to use. It's about finding the best switch sites to learn to use. You need to teach multiple switch sites and movements. You will want the student to eventually learn two-switch scanning to be faster at accessing the vocabulary. Students can use multiple switches to control various devices such as toys, lights, etc. to have greater control over their environment. Also, students may fatigue when only using one site, or may have an injury where they cannot access that switch site or movement for a period of time. And remember, the initiation of intent must come from within the student. They must develop intentional communication in the end. For some students, switches may be an important foundation to build all learning upon. How can we understand the world around us if we don't know that we can have influence over it? Switches may be the only way students with complex needs can interact with the world around them. Switch play to develop cause and effect is learned through trial and error. Just like when a baby throws a toy on the floor and learns that someone will pick it up. Or when the baby presses a button on a pop-up toy. A child plays with the toy and eventually learns to activate the buttons. Students must develop their understanding through experiencing a range of different contexts. We must provide the opportunities to engage in play. But first, we have to make sure they can access the switch. Exploratory play involves students using all their senses. They will examine objects by looking, touching, with their hands and mouths, listening, and moving objects to learn about how they can influence the world around them. And this type of play could include sand, water, and messy play. So how do you find an accessible switch, one the student can activate easily? Again, it's trial and error. Don't be afraid to try different switches depending on the student's skills. Also, you don't have to wait for the perfect switch. Just get started. The perfect switch doesn't exist. Start with what you have. Document what works and the specific barriers you encounter. Use the progress monitoring tool. As your team looks for an accessible switch, consider these factors. Is the target area of the switch big enough for the student to touch? Can the student see the switch against the background? If vision impaired, can they feel its location? Can the student apply enough pressure to the switch to activate it? Document on the progress monitoring tool. Let's talk about seating and positioning for a minute. This can be your first step. Contact your OT/PT for support. You may even find that certain movements are only possible with correct positioning. One last thought for service providers and caregivers about how to respond when a student does activate a switch. Similar to AAC, where you don't praise students for hitting a button, you respond to the message the student expressed. Keep the student's focus on the activity rather than the switch. We want them to see the motivational reward they are causing to happen rather than focusing on pressing the switch. You would say, "More car, please," rather than "press the switch." When a student successfully activates the switch, the teacher praises them and encourages them to look and listen to the reward or activity. Because when you say switch, the student's focus moves away from the activity. To prompt the student to turn the lights on, the teacher says, "More lights, please." He doesn't say, "Press the switch." And then the teacher responds to the activation. When the student does activate the lights, the teacher responds by encouraging him to look at the lights, by saying, "Wow, look at those colors." He does not say, "Good hitting the switch." He praises the results of the student's switch activation, not the motor movement itself. Two main takeaways. Don't talk about the switch, and encourage them to look at the activity. Okay, hope you enjoy the videos and have fun with the Time to Climb game in Nearpod.